welcome to Language Learning Life. My name's Tracy, and today I'm going to be talking to you about this resource for learning the Irish language, or Gaelic, Buntús Cainte. It's much talked about on the internet, so there's plenty of information out there, but I thought I'd do a personal review of it, or at least of how far I've got with it. Its title means basic speaking, or rudiments of speech. There are many different ways that people kind of render that in English. And it first existed not only in book form, but as a TV show of similar vintage to myself, so back from the 60s. And some extracts from that are actually available to watch online. They're worth chasing up just to get the feel and tone of it, and also to hear the native Irish speakers. I've got this one, the 2013 reprint, so it's gone through many different printings of part 1, because that's the year 2013 that I started wanting to learn the language. That's another story I'll get to, but I bought that in Dublin when I happened to be there. And then I have also part 2, a different colour, so orange instead of red, and part 3. It's from 2015 and 2017 to keep going, even though I hadn't at that point finished the first book yet. It was really for fear of not being able to get them back at home where I live in Australia, which is, again, a whole other story. You can actually buy them online, but I bought them in person, the parts 2 and 3 in Eason's in Killarney, and they were, I think, €10 each, which is a bit of a bargain for what you get. The books have, at least these editions do, have the CDs of the sound in front and in back, so you get 2 discs worth that match the text in the books. So the plus side of Buntús Cainte, apart from the fact that you're hearing actually native speakers, which I think is really important, at least it is for me, is that it's a kind of audiolingual method. It won't explain the grammar to you, but it logically unfolds it by the examples that you're given and that you repeat. It's a bit like when you learn your own first language by hearing it, and eventually you hear enough to know the variations by ear. Albeit, of course, small children in their native language make mistakes. They might say I goed instead of I went in English, for example. But eventually, through hearing it enough, they self-correct. Maybe we also get explicitly taught in school, although there's not a lot of explicit grammar teaching, at least where it wasn't when I grew up. The other good things about this book, or this series of books, is it's entertaining. It's quite witty. It has cartoons, line drawings like this. There are kind of running jokes in it. It's not too jam-packed in each lesson. The idea is that you're working through it in chunks. At least I didn't feel overloaded with it. It comes with sound, and as I say, it's native speakers. So you're hearing real Irish or real Gaelic sounds, not English approximations. Some of those are quite difficult, and maybe difficult especially at first to hear the difference. But it's much easier, I find, to learn from hearing it than to learn from someone explaining it, or maybe to hear it first and then have someone explaining, actually, this is what they're doing with their mouth or their tongue or their lips. Because those little distinctions can make a huge difference in meaning. So it's not so much that it's important for matters of correctness to speak as native speakers do, but for the sake of being understood. You're meant to do a lesson a day, I think. You listen a few times, then eventually you listen and repeat. So if I just open at one of the lessons, you can see there's vocabulary, and at the end of each chapter a conversation, a recorded conversation. And you've got the English translation in front of you. The pictures work as extra prompts that help you remember things. Especially because they are often quite amusing, whether intentionally or not. Once you can recall and say the Gaelic or the Irish from memory, you've got it and you move forward. And that, of course, is self-paced. You can stick with a lesson as long as you need to or go back to it, circling back, controlling how many times you revisit as much as you like. I found, though, that I did have to make myself up some written sheets of exercises based on it to make sure I could reproduce the original and spelled correctly. That might be connected to how I listened. I didn't initially do this exactly the way you meant to. I found myself doing a long commute on fairly empty country roads every day, early in the day. And so I would just put the CD in and let it play. And that meant through repetition, the language became very familiar. But it also meant, of course, that sometimes I wasn't really sure what was going on. You have to really trust the process of this book, that through repetition you'll eventually get there and you'll hear it rather than have to know it consciously. Some people find the content dated. As I say, it's from the 1960s, and that's a very long time ago. Of course it is. But the grammatical principles still hold, and it isn't hard to look up info about things. The content also reflects an older Ireland in other ways. And I'll give some examples of that in terms of the kind of thing you're talking about. We'll look at book 1. You'll certainly find that you know how to say "Cá raibh an capall obair inné." Where was the horse working yesterday? Or "Cá raibh an mó inniu." Where was the cow today? Nach raibh an chaora lag sin ithe. Wasn't that weak sheep eating? Nonetheless, I do find those phrases have stayed in my mind and they form a template. We don't all live in cities or even in Ireland at all. And though it is great to have textbooks with relevant up-to-the-minute content, there's also something to be said for phrases that stay in your mind regardless, and you can use them to build similar constructions. It's all about things coming back when you need them. The content is built around a set of characters, as I mentioned, that you soon come to know, and there's a huge thread of facetious humour running through the books, as well as some perhaps unintentional humour. Many people have commented on this, that stems from the difference in era and family structures. And as I say, it probably is best to have the book open in front of you while you're listening, so that you don't get confused between whether it's the child speaking or the adult or who the characters are, because they can sound quite similar. As I move forward with learning Irish Gaelic again, because this has been a repeat process where I pick it up and keep trying, and I still see myself as a beginner, hopefully eventually get out of part 1 and into parts 2 and 3.